Well, welcome back. Here for week 2. I guess you can call it that. This is our second podcast here. Mike Thornton, Tony Altieri, welcome to the DFS Jags show. For those of you, I've had a couple Twitter questions posed to me. Why Jags, right? Like, why would we call ourselves Jags? Is there some kind of military connotation with us, or what's the deal? So Jags is an acronym. It stands for just another guy. So for us, Mike and I, we're just a couple Jags. So we're two guys, absolutely love DFS golf. We've stated that before, and we're happy to be here with you guys. Glad you were able to tune in and take a small slice of your day. Like I told Mike, I think our goal for today is to trim down that 48, 50 minutes down to about 20 or 30. Give you guys some nuggets of information about the Wyndham, and hopefully win you guys a crap load of money this week, right?
Yeah, hopefully.
All right, before we jump into all that and we talk about who we are and what we do, Mike, thoughts on the PGA Championship last week? Exciting golf on TV.
Oh, it was great to watch. I mean, I was not in my lineups weren't doing very well. So
we should probably talk about that for a second.
That helped me enjoy the weekend. I can never watch when my lineups are in contention. So great golf, and I won't ruin some of these other questions you have, but loved it. Exciting right down to the wire there until about hole number, I think it was 17 when Tiger hit that par 5 almost into the water, and that kind of was it for him.
Yeah.
And then Brooks took over, but loved it. Great golf.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the nature of golf, the way Tiger affects the PGA, right? He's the one guy in the sport that kind of transcends everybody else. You can talk about the nature of competitive golf today versus when he was in his heyday, but I think it just goes to show you, man, people love Tiger Woods. And whether you're a huge fan or you want to see him fall on his ass, I think the big thing is when he's playing competitive golf, everybody pays attention to the tournaments. And so I think for the sport of golf, for the PGA, for all the metrics that they use to measure those things, I think it was fantastic. So we have a segment that I'm going to roll out today based off of last week. It's called Hate It or Love It. I'll ask you, Mike, a couple questions based off the PGA coverage that we saw last week and ask you your opinion, and you can tell me whether you hate it or love it. So the first question here, hate it or love it, CBS coverage of the event, particularly Tiger. We got a lot of Tiger this week, and some people would argue that the coverage of Tiger may have overshadowed what Brooks did on the course, which was play lights out, make no mistakes, continually hit amazing shots. But the story of CBS's coverage is really the coverage of Tiger. Hate it or love it?
Absolutely love it. Tiger is such a competitor, so am I. Yeah. And he just gets me
Did you just
excited.
compare yourself to Tiger Woods?
I did.
I can see a lot of physical similarities.
Oh yeah, in other sports, I'm like, I want to win, and you can see that with Tiger. He wants to win.
Yeah.
Koepka was doing his thing, but it's boring. I want to see a guy look like he's in it, and Tiger just, oh my gosh, just the excitement that he brings to the sport, and it just got me pumped up, and I loved it.
Yeah, the
Never
walk
too
up.
much for me.
No, absolutely. The walk up on 18, and then the finish, and then just the way the crowd reacted to him as he left the green. They literally could have ended the telecast, and that could have been the story, right? Yeah. It was funny today. I had some folks who know that we're golf fans. Today at lunch, the guy was like, "Hey, didn't Tiger Woods win some tournament this weekend?" And it's like, no, he finished second, but for the casual fan, that's all they took away from it. So I agree with you. Love the coverage, compelling golf, so many guys in the hunt. Going into Sunday, couldn't have been more excited. So I have to give it an absolute love it. Question B within that first one is, what about Finau, dude? I was so pissed off, and it had less to do with the fact that he was a core guy for me and more to do with the fact that the guy goes out Thursday, shoots +4. I mean, you and I were lamenting, he's donezo. He's not going to be able to come back from this. Yeah. He comes out, shoots 5 straight birdies in a row, triple bogeys the 6th, shoots 2 more birdies, and bogeys the 9th hole going into the back 9 on the tougher side. And we saw 0 shots.
Yeah, no, I hate that, obviously. Finau deserved some coverage that day for what he was doing, and they did make up for a little bit on Saturday morning. I got up nice and early to watch the rest of the round finish up.
Yeah.
And he was pretty much heavily covered. But, yeah, that first 9 where he just killed it. I mean, 5 birdies, triple, then I think he birdied, bogey, birdie. It was like he couldn't get a par. It was either birdie or bogey. Yeah, so definitely hate that. They should have been all over that.
I agree with you. Hated it. It's so piss poor. And to me, in this day and age where we have, cameras everywhere and the ability to film, when is the PGA going to join the rest of sports? I mean, you've heard a number of people, Mayow's huge into this, is basically creating some form of a red zone for golf where you can switch to the golfer that you want to see. Again, without daily fantasy golf and people like Tiger Woods, golf's probably a dead sport. No one's going to watch it. So again, I hated the fact that they didn't cover him. I was happy he made the cut because he was in 80% of my lineups, but that's besides the point. Hate it or love it, Brooks Koepka, a lot's been said, or I should say hasn't been said about him, and it's because the guy was stone-faced out there, right? I mean, just it didn't matter what was going on around him after he birdied back-to-back holes. They're talking about his mom being on the green and him not knowing. I mean, the guy was just absolutely stoic and emotionless. Hate it or love it.
I'm torn on this one, Tony. You're only giving me one of the other options.
You gotta take a stand, man.
I know. I hate it.
Okay.
Let's just go with that.
Okay.
Again, Tiger pumping me up. I'm so into it. I don't want to leave the front of my TV. They switch over to Koepka. I'm like, get me back to Tiger. Get me back to Tiger. So, hate it. And then, of course, at the end there, I'm expecting some big emotional thing when he kept saying, oh, his mom flew in. He doesn't know she's there.
Yeah.
And here comes Mom, and it's like, hey, Mom.
Yeah,
and
he was like, hey,
quick
what's up?
And I'm on my way. So, I don't know. Hate it.
Yeah, I agree with you. Hated it. I wanted to see a little more fire. I can't fault a guy for being able to stay in the moment and stay composed under the pressure and everything that was going on. So from that aspect, I understand exactly what you're saying. But I mean, come on, Brooks, give me something. Give me a fist pump. Give me a tear. Give me something. Give me something.
And the fact that he didn't let Scott finish.
Yeah.
So that we could have, just that
this moment where he taps in.
I've never seen that before, where a winner who was clearly going to win wasn't the last guy to putt.
It felt awkward. It felt very awkward watching it. No, I totally agree. All right, last bit on hater to love it. Terrell Hatton's one of those guys, a total opposite of Brooks, right? Fiery guy. He lets you know exactly where he stands in every single shot, multiple times. So I watched the CBS coverage online that covered 16, 17, and 18. So I watched him and Rafa finish out. And I want to say in those 3 holes, he probably dropped 2 or 3 F-bombs. I heard him say the word shit a couple times. But the best was he hits a 304-yard drive. I think it was on the 17th hole. Walks up, hits the next one in the water. And as the guy's talking, full-on F-bomb, throwing a fist. Hate it or love it.
An approach to 17. After a drive of 304 yards, you can watch our virtual eye technology.
Love it. Love the emotion. Obviously the guy's out there to win, and he shows that emotion. Just like I was saying, Brooks, no emotion. I want to see that emotion.
Yeah.
Maybe they can talk to him a little bit about the language. But again, that's just a guy who wants to win.
Dude, I absolutely love it. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, short of being like Angel Cabrera, or not Angel Cabrera, but the Spanish dude over there who smokes cigars on. I love that. I love personalities in golf. There's so much downtime in golf, and the sport itself can be very controlled and emotionless. So to have a guy be fiery and do those kind of things, I think it's great for the game. I think people love it. It's polarizing. All of those things make it more interesting. So I agree with you. Absolutely hate it. So this week, after what I would call I wouldn't necessarily unsuccessful, but I broke even for the week. You obviously did not have the same effect of breaking even, but for me, when I break even, the way that I look at it is it's 4 days of entertainment, right?
Exactly.
It's a cheap high for me to be able to watch golf, be in and out of it. I mean, like I had texted you at one point on Saturday, I found myself a few $100s up, and then at one point Sunday I was down, and to end up even for me, I guess it's great because now I need to take all those funds and apply them to the Wyndham this week, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was a little bum. Obviously my lineups were done on Friday due to the fact that some of the core guys like Casey and Stenson, those 2 guys missed, and that pretty much did me in. I had very little Reed. Talked about Reed in our last show, and I was able to get off him. Only had 10% share of him, but the other 2 guys just did me in, and those are guys that, frankly, if you were to tell me pick the 2 that are gonna miss the cut, those have been the last 2. I'd say you're going to miss the cut. So that did me in. But you know what? I still had Koepka. We both were on Koepka.
Yep.
And this is twice now, 2 of the last 3 majors that we had him in all our lineups for the most part.
Yeah.
But even with 5 or 6 in Koepka, I could not cash. Sometimes I have in majors before.
Yeah.
But my, other than the rest of the guys, the supporting cast, just wasn't.
Nobody
there
showed
in
up.
in my lineup. So.
Yeah, for me, right, I hit a home run with Woodland. I talked about him in the show. He popped in my model. It was a guy that I put in 60 or 70% of my lineups. I had the most massive cut sweat of all times with Finau, which was great entertainment in itself. Like if you could have seen me on my phone watching Shot Tracker, about ready to throw it out the window every 5 seconds. So for me, it was a successful week that I got my money back. And like I said, I go into the Wyndham net zero, ready to apply those funds to this week. So let's jump into this week's tournament. We are in North Carolina, in Greensboro at the Wyndham Championship. So a little bit different to last week, where this is a course and a tournament that's played damn near every year on tour, right? So you've got quite a bit of course history. You've got guys who have shown in the past that they play very well at this tournament. So you've got some course horses. For us today, I think what we'd like to focus on again is that 20 line of GPP. We'll mention some guys for cash. We'll also talk about some tournament strategy, something we didn't mention last week. In terms of the weather this week out there in North Carolina, it's going to be very similar to what we saw at Bellerive in St. Louis. The big difference is you have a lot more rain that could impact the tournament. They're calling for some thunderstorms. This could delay rounds. It could stop the tournament altogether. There's a possibility on Sunday that, heck, it could even cut the tournament short. So things to take into consideration if you're playing Showdown, if you're looking at certain guys, that weather in terms of rain could impact their ability to finish rounds. In terms of how that will impact the course, I think if anything, it makes the course play a little bit softer. Not a lot of wind traditionally out here. Again, very similar to what we saw last week. And I think if there was any favor at all, it's probably more towards what's going to be happening with the precipitation, where you may have guys that are in that PM Thursday, AM Friday, have a little bit better of a draw. Other things to take into consideration, the course itself is Sedgefield Country Club. I mentioned before it's in Greensboro, North Carolina. It's just over 7,100 yards. It's a par 70, only 2 par 5s. The greens here were converted from bentgrass greens to Bermuda, so they are predicting that they are going to roll a little bit faster this week compared to where they were the last few years. So please take that into consideration when you're talking about it. There's a great write-up that's out there. It's on rotoworld.com. I'll provide the link here in the video so that way you guys can check it out. But they do a great job of kind of looking at the course as a whole, how it's broken down, the guys that have had success there. In terms of what kind of guys we're looking at this week, right? This course, especially the last 2 years, it's been a scorer's track, right? I think the winning score was Stenson last year at 22 under. I believe he broke a record or tied a record in this tournament. Traditionally, it's been guys who can absolutely pile on low numbers. So in terms of what you want to do this week, what I'm going to be looking and targeting, I think the big thing for us is we want to focus on guys that can go out there and go low. Another narrative that you will see in play is going to be FedEx Cup standings. In terms of where guys stand now, you should be seeing on the screen here, there are a number of guys in the field this week that will be showing up on the FedEx Cup standings anywhere between 100 and 150. Remember, the magic number is 125. That gets you into the playoffs. And if you look, pretty much everybody on this list from number 100 all the way to 150 are playing this week because they're trying to get in the FedEx Cup playoffs. We're talking about big money. We're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of millions of dollars at stake. And so these guys want to place in that top 125 so they can move into the FedEx Cup playoffs. I believe, Mike, do you know, is this the last event before the playoffs start?
I don't think it is. I think there's one more after the Wyndham.
But very important. Again, when we talk about an easy course, someplace you can go out and light it up, you can absolutely do this here. Key stats this week. We talked a little bit about the course. Traditionally, fairly narrow fairways compared to the rest of the courses on tour, but not difficult to score. So in terms of off the tee, you want a guy who can put it in the fairway. Again, a super important metric. Same thing last week for me, approach. I want a guy who's going to put the ball close. So you're going to be looking at other things like proximity. And then greens and regulation, very important to me. And of course, if I'm looking at scores, I want birdies or better. I want guys who can go out there and go low and throw up big numbers. What about for you, Mike?
Pretty much the same. The only thing I'd add to that is you might have mentioned putting. Putting's a little bit higher this week for me, only because I want those guys that are red hot with the iron, with the flat stick there. Ball strikers as well. When I looked at this last year in my model, ball striking was a key stat. So I want those ball strikers. And obviously, ball striking is driving the distance, driving accuracy, as well as approach kind of combined. And to me, that just it was the one stat where all the top 20, 25 guys were. It really showed itself. Whereas the other stats, people were all over the place. So ball striker for me, and then par 4, 400 to 450 scoring.
Yeah, a number of it's a great point. A number of the par fours on this course fall within that yardage. So you're going to want to have guys that are comfortable there, right? You don't need particularly guys who are long off the tee, but you need guys who are accurate. If you're Jimmy Walker-ing the ball over the damn course, you're going to be in trouble. But we saw it with Gary Woodland last week. If you can put the ball in the fairway and give yourself an opportunity to score, there's low numbers out there. In terms of guys, we mentioned some of the metrics, looking back at the last 12 weeks, some of the guys that popped for approach statistics, Chris Kirk, Julian Surrey, T-Dunks, Tyler Duncan. These are all guys that have been guys we've seen in recent tournaments, right? We talked about that as well, too. There was this stretch in between the two majors where you had a number of tournaments that didn't have your premier guys. They would have one or two guys at the top, but a bunch of guys that were web.com guys, a lot of guys that were rookies or second-year guys. And so we got an opportunity to learn a little bit about those guys. In terms of putting this week as well, too, let's take a quick look at the top 10 here. So Brian Gay, Ryan Blom, Derek Fathauer, Brant Snedeker, all guys that we know should be in there, right? So, again, when you're targeting guys this week and you're building your models, whether it's on Fantasy National or Fantasy Golf Metrics, take a look at the stats that we've listed out there. Those will be important. Thanks again to Grant_Dole and to Billy_Thornton, who sent across questions about what the key metrics would be for us this week. We appreciate the feedback. Do not forget to follow us on Twitter, DFSJags, or I should say at DFSJags on Twitter. Mike and I will always be available to answer questions. And as well, you'll see at the end of the podcast, if you guys want, send us an email. We're happy to share our models, what we went into it, how we built it, how we weighted things, because we want you guys to have success out there. All right, Mike. So in terms of lineup building and rostering, where do you think a lot of the ownership's going to fall this week when we look at the pricing, right? DraftKings pricing was posted this afternoon. Where do you think a lot of players are going to start rostering guys and posting players?
You look funny for me. I'm never usually a Stars and Scrubs guy.
Yeah.
But I'm doing a hybrid approach. I'm going to take one of those guys above 10K this week. And
we talked about that. Right. That's usually not in our brand, right?
No, it isn't. But I'm going to go with Simpson. But the rest of my lineup is pretty much going to be in that 7,000 range, believe it or not. I mean, we're talking guys that you've already mentioned, but Ryan Armours of the world, the Varner's up in the 8s. Maybe I'll reach up there a little bit. But some 8K guys, and then most of the rest of my lineup will probably be in that 7K with a lot of guys that I kind of trust and guys that I've gained trust on over the last 5 tournaments. Guys I didn't know before, Sam Riders of the world, Tyler Duncan you already mentioned. Those type of guys, they're going to be anchoring my lineup.
It's funny you mentioned that. When we look at, the pricing, you've got Webb Simpson at 11.6 at the top of the board. We made the statement last week, we never take the guy at the top of the board, right? Because it just basically kills your construction. Try and find value. That's rule number 1 for us. Take a look at the board and find value. But it's hard to ignore his course history here. I think he's the all-time money winner. He's won here before. He's a guy who's from North Carolina, so this is a home track for him. So I think it's really difficult to ignore him. There has been some shakeup. Hideki Matsuyama was a late add. Stuart Sink was a pull. So Matsuyama comes in at second at 11.3 and then Stenson at 11,000. It's hard for me to go up and grab one of those guys above $11,000 just because, again, we were getting Webb Simpson at $7,700 last week. So now I'm making a $4,000 adjustment to reach up above 11K and get him. I understand it. I see the value because basically you're guaranteeing yourself a top 10 with Webb Simpson in this tournament. And again, there are no guarantees in golf, but he's about as close to a lock for a top 10 guy as you can get. Stenson, who won the tournament last year at 22 under, he hasn't been the guy he was last year. He came into this tournament last year saying basically the only reason he was there is because he had to get his 15 starts to maintain his PGA Tour card. So whether or not he's taking that same methodology this week and the result is the same, I don't know. He fits the mold for the things that you want. He's not super long off the tee. He's probably going to hit a 3-wood or a driving iron the entire week. So again, there's a lot of value in Stenson's game compared to a lot of the guys in the field this week. The range that you mentioned, that's under 8K, $7,000 range. There's a lot of great names there. A lot of guys that we've played in recent weeks. You referenced some of those names. Guys like, let's see here, CT Pan, $7,800. CT's been a great guy for us. You know, the one week he shit the bed on us was the very first week that we all were on him, and he was chalk. And of course, he misses the cut, right? Which is bad on us. But then since then, he's done really, really well. He's not a guy that's going to finish in the top 10, but he's a guy that's going to make the cut. He's going to score points. And at $7,800, there's a lot of value there. Another guy, just based off course history on what he's done, is Vaughn Taylor at $6,900, right? Vaughn's a guy the last 3 years, he's finished inside the top 25, the only guy to do that the last 3 years in a row. The other thing with Vaughn Taylor is he kind of fits the mold for all the things that we're looking for this week. You know, he's an accurate guy. He's pretty good with the long irons. He's a decent putter. You know, so again, when we start trying to fit the mold around what type of guys we want, I think we're circling our wagons around all the same kind of guys. And I think it's important, whether you're choosing to do stars and scrubs or you're choosing to do more of a balanced lineup, that you find guys that fit the course, right? Doesn't necessarily mean a course horse, but when you're building your models, take a look at what's been successful there in the past, apply that to the field that's here, and then go out and build some lineups. One thing we didn't talk about last week that I referenced earlier in the show is where you're going to play your money and build your lineups, right? So we had a different philosophy last week in the PGA about where we spent our money, right? You were heavily into the Millie Maker. That's basically all you played. For me, I played a bunch of smaller tournaments, right? And when I look at how I invest my money in DFS, I take a look at the scenario, take a look at the field, get a feel for how confident I am in the players, and then choose where to go, because we're not always guys who are playing the Millionaire Maker GPP. Sometimes we choose to do that. You love to do it for the majors, right? But I really like to take a look at smaller fields. I love to take advantage of the fact that these tools are available and out there. I call on the experience that I have in playing in recent weeks or over the last 4 or 5 years to say, okay, where can I take all of this knowledge and apply a relatively small amount of money? Like we said, we're talking about lineups that you're building for less than 100, for majors maybe less than $200 in a week, and get my most bang for the buck to have the best return. When you can invest in lineups in tournaments that are less than 7,000 people, especially when you start getting into the tournaments that are less than 2,000 people, your odds for success start to increase dramatically, right?
Yeah, the least number of people, obviously your odds shoot up. I like to play just for the majors. I play the Millie. I always do it. All 4 majors. I get into the Millie Maker, and this year definitely down a little bit. Didn't do very well this year. And again, it's because I went with a slightly different philosophy than I have in years past.
Yeah.
I do believe in the future it will pay off, and that's just going with the tighter core. Obviously, the tight core will burn you. If you get 1 or 2 guys miss, it pretty much shoots all your lineups. But when they get through, they're going to hit. So that's something I just started applying, in the last few months. So I'm hoping that pays off eventually. And yeah, for this type of week, this type of tournament, I will be looking to play in those tournaments, those small GPPs. Heck, I'm even looking for ones that have 300 to 500. We saw somebody. It's funny also too. The smaller the people, the better your chances are. CJ Bedford, I think, tweeted last night how he won $40,000 in the Thunderdome.
In the Thunderdome,
he came in third or fourth place, and he had 5 or 6 guys in his lineup.
Yeah.
So it is key the tournaments. Obviously, those entry fees are a bit much for you and I.
Oh yeah.
But you see the point there. Those larger entry fees, smaller amount of people, higher payouts at the top. And then again, your odds are just so much better.
It's always disappointing, like I was telling you, when I see a guy tweet out that he won 40 Gs and his roster scores 466 points, and I had 3 lineups this week that would have beaten that lineup. Yeah. That's always a little tough to stomach. But again, tournament selection, I think, is an important thing. It's never really talked about where you play. Everybody generically talks about the Millionaire Maker or the larger GPPs. Be smart with your money. Take a look at the tournaments that are available. Don't be afraid of cash lineups. Again, because if you're looking to build your bankroll from week to week, if you're just looking to be entertained, those are great options. You don't have to invest $100 every week and lose $40 or $50 and continually kind of feed the beast. Take a look at the tournaments that you're playing. If you're looking for any advice, we can send out and tweet out the tournaments that we're playing this week. Like I said, reach out to us at DFSJags on Twitter. We'd be happy to show you the tournaments that we're playing this week and let you know kind of where we're at. In terms of this week, where do you think a lot of players are going to congregate when they start building their lineups? Do you think it's going to be stars and scrubs, or do you think it's going to be balanced?
I think it's going to be stars and scrubs. It's hard to find balanced guys at this pricing that they have today. So I think it's stars and scrubs. Go with some key guys that you obviously trust. And for me, I mean, like I said, there's some guys down there in the sevens, lower sevens, mid sevens.
There's a
that
ton
I
of value
trust these days, and I only got to know them over the past 5 to 6 weeks when we were playing all those rough tournaments. So, stars and scrubs.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, when you look at the $9,000 and $8,000 range, even though there's some names like Harold Varner and Ryan Moore and Daniel Berger, is there any more win equity there than there is with guys with CT Pan or Jamie Lovemark or Chesson Headley? Do you have that much more confidence to invest another $2,000 between those guys? I don't think so either. So I think people are going to naturally gravitate to the top of the board and then in that $7,000 range. We talked about it. There are a number of guys basically priced under 8K where you can differentiate lineups. You talked about core, Mike. How many guys do you think, if you were doing that 20 lineups like we always talk about in the show, how many guys do you think you'll probably have in your core? And if you're going to scatter it all, where will that be?
Well, if I'm going to scatter it all, it's going to be down towards the bottom, of course. And for 20 lineups, I typically like to have 15 to 18 guys. That's what I've been tinkering with.
Yeah.
15 to 18 total guys that'll make up those 20 lineups. So it's pretty tight core. I've had it tighter before. I mean, I think I've went as few as 13 guys. Again, but with this, again, not trusting a whole lot, I'm going to expand it a little bit more because hopefully the GPPs that I play in, the goal is to get at least one 6 of 6 through, and then let's have a fun weekend, right?
Yeah.
Can't do anything if I don't get any 6 of 6 through. It's nice if that core hits too, because then again, all my lineups are hitting. But again, this week I'm gonna stay pretty tight. 18, I think that's a good number. Where have you been at in your past weeks? You've been pretty much right around that number as well.
You know, for me, like I had 27 lineups last week, and I believe I had 23 golfers in those 27 lineups. So again, I don't think it's necessarily expanding to have coverage on everybody. I think you do yourself a disservice doing it that way, and I think that's why we've kind of gone to a tighter core. And then again, you mentioned it. When you hit home runs. That's the phenomenal thing. Obviously, we didn't hit a home run last week, but still, I think that's the in and out of weekly DFS is you can go into a week and going with a very tight core, feeling good. For me, I think this week I'm going to use a little bit different strategy. It's something that we've employed in the past where I may go a tighter core at the bottom and take more of a scatter shot at the top. You know, maybe play a little Hideki, maybe play a little Webb Simpson, maybe sprinkle in some Stenson, some of those guys up over $9,000 and $10,000. I don't have a ton of confidence in guys like Shane Lowry or Billy Horschel, but you know, Rafa Cabrera is another guy who's coming in with great form. He traditionally doesn't fit the mold here. A lot of things we talked about, the metrics, he's just not ringing a bell. With all of that said, this is the kind of course where you can go in, and if you're on a heater, go in and dominate. So I think this week I'll go much tighter towards the bottom. I'll probably have 4 or 5 guys that I'll use in that sub $8,000 range, and then I'll scatter a bit at the top to give me some coverage, hopefully, because I think the winner's going to come from that range.
I like that. We've talked about that that was something that came to us. I think we heard it on another show that we were listening to.
Yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense. I mean, and this is kind of relatively new for us. Where we're really tight down at the bottom, and then we're just kind of sprinkling at the top. I like that strategy. Not sure. I feel pretty good with who I'm going to go with at the top. I'm not sure. I think I'm just going to vary, if at all, down at the bottom.
Yeah. Guys that I think they're going to be chalky this week. I think Webb Simpson's going to be very chalky, even though he's the top guy at the board, just because the rest of the field isn't great. Hideki, there's some lingering injury issues and some performance issues as of late. Same thing with Stenson, so I think he's going to be heavily owned. And then again, we referenced a lot of the guys. If we're targeting guys and we're looking at data and guys are popping in our model, the same thing is going to happen with everybody else. So I think you're going to see a lot of guys. I think you're going to see your CT Pans and your Ryan Armours, your Sam Ryders, your Harold Varners. I think those guys will all be fairly chalky this week. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't play them. We talk about this all the time. Don't fear the chalk. This week, it's a little bit different where you've got what could be bad chalk in those low sevens, but there is some good chalk in Webb Simpson at the top of the board, and you shouldn't fear eating that chalk.
And just to be straight, he is the only guy above 10 that I would play.
Yeah.
There's some guys in the 9s, but you mentioned Cabrera Bello. Maybe I've always been a fan of his, and he's done well for me in the past. But again, the only guy I'm going to go over 10K is Webb Simpson. And one guy we didn't mention, I want to make sure we mention, it was Chris Kirk. To me, the guy's been doing, I mean, I've had him in lineups over the past 5-6 weeks, he's just been doing quite well. And for $7,500 in this type of field, I think he's underpriced big time.
Yeah, Chris Kirk's a guy. He hasn't been lighting the world on fire, but he's been making cuts. He's been scoring points. He's kind of one of those guys we talk about all the time. If you're going to invest in guys week in and week out, you want to have guys that you can set it and forget it, right? Place your money in there. It's gonna be fine. He's not going to score me 150 DraftKings points, but I know I've got 60 to 70 points there and a guy that's going to make the cut. So again, making those choices where you have to, I think are important, and obviously those can be the difference between a 5-6 that ends up winning you quite a bit of money, or a 6-6 lineup getting all the way through. Taking a look at a couple other places, guys that we've played the past. One of the things that's a little bit weird in this course is driving distance has a little bit of a negative corollary where we see some of our bombers not perform here. You've got guys like Keith Mitchell, like Tway, like Kokrak, all coming in pretty good form. They hit the crap out of the ball. Do you see any advantages to rostering those guys this week?
No, I mean, again, it all comes down to how they're gonna show up on the on my model, and to be honest, most of those bombers aren't showing up. For instance, you mentioned Kokrak, right?
Yeah.
Let's see where he's showing right now. So he actually is popping at number 8 on my model, pretty darn good. So again, that tells me his last 12 rounds based on the key stats that I used. And again, we can put our key stats out. Tony will post that in the video. He's number 3. So, and he's been red hot. So
yeah,
I don't see any problem with going with that type of guy. That tells me that his approach and his ball striking is on fire. Over the past 24 rounds, he's ranking number 29 in my model. So don't have a problem with that. Again, most of the guys, I'm not really. Last week, I did want the edge to the drivers, and that turned out to be true. Like at the top of the leaderboard, there were guys. Most of those guys at the top were guys that could hit the ball some distance. Whereas this week, no, not important to me.
I guess it's important here, since we've got a little bit of a segue before we get out of here. The third member of our group, Ryan Keefe, we've talked about him before. Ryan, former competitive golfer, played collegiately at, I think, UCSB up in Santa Barbara. Yeah. He's the Ricky Fowler whisperer. He's our ear to the tour, and so Ryan makes his picks every week. We are going to share those with you guys in our videos and show you where he is. And I think it's important because Ryan seems to kick our ass and he uses no data, right?
No data whatsoever.
It's one of the most defeating things that there is to have a guy who does nothing in terms of investing his time or energy trying to see who's popping in models, who's got the best stats, all of those different, looking at course layouts and fit. He basically takes a look at the field and goes, I like these 6 guys. And typically, he's kicked the crap out of us every week. So to do you guys a favor, because obviously we're not learning from it, we're going to post his team out there for you guys to see. Feel free to reach out to us. If you'd like to get a hold of Ryan, you could reach out to us through the Twitter handle or through our email, and Ryan would be happy to reach back out to you guys. We're hoping at some point in time he gets away from being camera shy and wants to get on the screen with us, but that's yet to be seen. Well, I think that pretty much takes care of this week. Any finishing thoughts? Who do you think wins this week in North Carolina?
I'm going to give you one guy that obviously I'm going to be playing Simpson, so I'm going to say Simpson.
Okay.
However, if I had to pick a flyer that I think is going to win it, Harold Varner.
Harold Varner. Varner's an interesting pick. He's due. I mean, he's been playing great golf. I love Varner because he sports all the Jordan gear out there, right? One of my goals in life is to get a pair of Jordan golf cleats to wear. So if anybody's got any, like to send me, I'm a size 12. So I'd be happy to wear those and sport those. And then, of course, mention you on the podcast. For me, I think Webb Simpson is a guy. The other guy that I kind of like this week is Ryan Moore. He's a guy that's won here in the past. He went out and shit the bed on Sunday. I think he finished +1. He got beat by one of the frickin' club pros in the PGA Championship. But again, I think Ryan Moore's game fits here. He's one of those guys, when he's hot with the putter, he's tough to beat. He's been playing very good golf up until Sunday. So I like Ryan Moore. Kind of a flyer this week. Man, you could mention your boy Werenski, who was popping all over your model again, and he's a guy that fared very well last year, Richie Werenski. The other guy that I kind of like, and I don't know why, maybe it's because he lives in the Greensboro area, is Seamus Powers, a great putter, great approach player. If he can get through the frickin' cut, maybe he can contend, but he'd be more of a flyer over anything else. But, again, it'll be an interesting week. It'll be a bit of a letdown after the compelling golf that we had on TV last week, but I'm looking forward to it. Again, we mentioned it. Thank you very much each and every week for tuning in. Feel free to reach out to us. The Twitter handle, @DFSJags, if you want to get a hold of Mike or myself. Our email address will be posted if you want to reach out to us there. Again, thank you guys so much. Good luck this week. And please give Ryan crap for not being on camera with us. Thanks. Have a great week.